Vampire burial reveals efforts to prevent child's return from the grave. University of Arizona article on Science Daily. This recent article, the summary says archaeologists found the remains of a 10-year-old child with a stone inserted into his or her mouth at a 5th century Italian cemetery. They think the stone was meant to keep the child from rising from the dead and spreading malaria to the living. The rock was inserted into the mouth of the 10-year-old to keep the diseased child from rising from the grave and spreading malaria. This is what the researchers believe. This is a photo from David Pickel, Stanford University. And University of Arizona, we know various U.S. universities have digs all over the ancient world, especially all through the year in Israel. People can volunteer to go and help in those digs, and it must be very interesting. If you have time and you want to do something special, that would be fantastic because they always find something. Now, this article states the skeletal remains uncovered by the archaeologists from the University of Arizona and Stanford University, along with archaeologists from Italy, included a skull with a rock intentionally inserted into the mouth. Researchers believe the stone may have been placed there as part of a funeral ritual designed to contain disease and the body itself. The discovery of this unusual so-called vampire burial was made over the summer in the commune of Lugnano in Taverina in Italy, the region of Umbria, where UA archaeologist David Sorin, the UA University of Arizona, David Sorin has overseen archaeological excavations since 1987. Sorin says, "I've never seen anything like it. It's extremely eerie and weird." He's the professor of the UA School of Anthropology, Departmental of Religious Studies and Classics. He says locally they're calling it the Vampire of Lugnano. End quote. The discovery was made at La Necropoli, necropolis meaning the cemetery, the La Necropoli del Bambini, the cemetery of the babies. That's the literal translation from Latin, from Italian to English. The cemetery of the babies, which dates to the mid-5th century, when a deadly malaria outbreak swept the area, killing many vulnerable babies and small children. The bodies of these young victims were buried at the site of an abandoned Roman villa that was originally constructed at the end of the 1st century BC. Until now, archaeologists believe the cemetery was designated specifically for infants, toddlers, and unborn fetuses. In previous excavations of more than 50 burials, a 3-year-old girl was the oldest child found. The discovery of the 10-year-old, whose age was determined based on dental development, but whose sex is unknown, suggests that the cemetery may have been used for older children as well, said bioarchaeologist Jordan Wilson, a UA doctoral student in anthropology, who analyzed the skeletal remains in Italy. Wilson said, "There are still sections of the cemetery that we have not excavated yet, so we don't know if we'll find other older children there." Unquote. Excavation director David Pickel, who has a master's degree in classical archaeology from UA and is now a doctoral student at Stanford, said the discovery has the potential to tell researchers much more about the devastating malaria epidemic that hit Umbria nearly 1,500 years ago, as well as the community's response to it. Pickel said, quote, "Given the age of this child and its unique deposition, with the stone placed within his or her mouth, it represents at the moment an anomaly within an already abnormal cemetery. This just further highlights how unique the infant, or now rather child, cemetery at Lugnano is." End quote. Witchcraft as disease control. In previous excavations at the cemetery of babies, archaeologists found infant and toddler bones alongside items like raven talons, toad bones, bronze cauldrons filled with ash, and the remains of puppies that appear to have been sacrificed, all objects commonly associated with witchcraft and magic. In addition, the body of a 3-year-old girl had stones weighing it down weighing down her hands and feet, and practice used by different cultures throughout history to keep the deceased in their graves. Quote, we know that the Romans were very much concerned with this and would even go to the extent of employing witchcraft to keep the evil, whatever is contaminating the body, from coming out, unquote, Soren said. The quote-unquote evil in the case of the babies and toddlers uncovered in Lugnano was malaria. Soren believed DNA testing of several of the excavated bones support his theory that it was malaria. Although the 10-year-old's remains have not yet undergone DNA testing, the child had an abscessed tooth, a side effect of malaria that suggests he or she may also have fallen victim to the disease, Wilson said. The child was one of 5 new burials uncovered in the cemetery over the summer. The body was found lying on its left side in a makeshift tomb created by 2 large roof tiles propped against a wall, an alla Cappuccina-style burial typical of Roman Italy. Quote, knowing that 2 large roof tiles were used for this burial, I was expecting something unique to be found inside, perhaps a double inhumation, not uncommon for this cemetery, where a single burial contains 2 individuals, Pickel said. And he adds, after removing the roof tiles, however, it became immediately clear to us that we were dealing with an older individual, unquote. The open position of the child's jaw, which would not have opened naturally during decomposition with the body positioned on its side, suggests that the rock was intentionally inserted in the mouth after death, Wilson said. Teeth marks on the surface of the stone provide further evidence that it was placed purposefully. The 10-year-old was the first at the cemetery to be found with a stone in its mouth. Similar burials have been documented in other locations, including in Venice, where an elderly 16th century woman dubbed the, quote, vampire of Venice, unquote, was found with a brick in her mouth in 2009. In Northamptonshire, England, in 2017, an adult male from the 3rd or 4th century, AD, obviously, was found buried face down with his tongue removed and replaced with a stone. These types of burials are often referred to as vampire burials, since they are associated with the belief that the dead could rise again. Other examples of vampire burials throughout history include bodies being staked to the ground through the heart or dismembered prior to internment. Quote, this is very unusual mortuary treatment that you see in various forms in different cultures, especially in the Roman world. That could indicate that there was a fear that this person might come back from the dead and try to spread disease to the living, Wilson said. Archaeologists will return to Lugnano next summer to complete their excavations of the cemetery and learn more about a dark time in history. Quote, it's a very human thing to have complicated feelings about the dead and wonder if that's really the end, Wilson said, adding, any time you can look at burials, they're significant because they provide a window into ancient minds. We have a saying in bioarchaeology, the dead don't bury themselves. We can tell a lot about people's beliefs and hopes, and by the way they treat the dead. This is by the University of Arizona, and it's on Science Daily.